Good evening, everyone. My name is Roberto Murray, Director for Community Empowerment for Councilmember Sean Elo Rivera's office, and thank you for joining our Know Your Rights Forum with State Senator Steve Padilla's office. I'm here to share why initiatives like this forum are so crucial. 12 years ago, my life and my family's life were changed forever when a family member was detained. They were on the way to watch me race at Mount Sac, a moment we had both been looking for months. Instead, they were arrested and later deported to Mexico, a country they haven't seen in over 2 decades. In the midst of all this chaos, what struck me the most was how little we knew about our rights. We didn't know how to protect him or what we could do in that moment. This lack of knowledge left us vulnerable to a system that often seems designed to confuse and disempower immigrants. This is why Know Your Rights forums are so important. When we know our rights, whether it's the right to remain silent, the right to refuse entry without a warrant, or the right to legal counsel, we are empowered to protect ourselves and our families. I urge all of us to continue pushing for resources and education that ensures every individual, regardless of immigration status, knows how to navigate the system. Together, we can build a more informed, empowered community. Thank you, Senator Padilla and Councilmember Rivera, and our amazing partners for making this space possible, and for standing with immigrant families like mine. The senator would have loved to be here with us today. However, he could not be in attendance due to having his daughter has gone into labor with his second grandchild. We send our warm congratulations to the entire Padilla family. I now will kick it to Diana Frias from our office for a short Spanish translation disclaimer. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diana Frias. I serve as the City Heights Community Representative with the Office of Sean Elo Rivera. Before we begin, just a few quick notes to help make tonight's workshop as accessible as possible. For Spanish interpretation, click the More icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, then select the globe icon labeled Interpretation and choose Spanish. Para servicios de interpretación, los participantes que deseen traducción en español vayan al icono de más en parte inferior de la pantalla. Hagan clic en el icono del globo, interpretación y seleccionen español. To enable auto-generated caption, click Show Captions, the bottom toolbar. If you like captions in a different language, click the small arrow on that icon, select Translation, and choose your preferred language. Para subtítulos, si desean activar los subtítulos generados automáticamente, puedes hacer clic en el icono Mostrar subtítulos en la barra de herramientas inferior. Si desea seleccionar un idioma diferente, haga clic en la pequeña flecha en el mismo icono y seleccione Traducción y añada el idioma preferido. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Deanna. Thank you so much, Deanna, for that. We will first kick it off with a message from California State Senator Steve Padilla.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I can't be with you today in person, but welcome to Know Your Rights. And I hope there's a lot of good heart and soul and spirit there gathered together to talk about how we as a community can support one another and empower one another. And that's what this gathering is. I'm very much proud to be part of representing all of you and to be partnering with Councilmember Elo Rivera on this important convening, where you'll be able to avail yourselves of a lot of important information about how to look out for yourselves, your family, your neighbors. I know that this is a tough time, but knowledge is power, and leaning on one another as a community is power. And that's what we do when we come together and know our rights and insist that in this country, everyone follows the law.
Thank you for that. And now we'll introduce San Diego City Council Member Sean Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Roberto, and gracias, Diana, for your words as well. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight for this Know Your Rights immigration workshop. Really appreciate that you're all here. We're here for a very basic reason, and that's because every person, everyone, regardless of immigration status or anything else, deserves to feel safe. They deserve to feel supported, and they deserve to be informed. So tonight we're doing what we can to make sure that our communities know their rights, that everyone can access trusted resources, and that everyone can feel a little bit more secure no matter what challenges are lying ahead. So this is also an important reminder that when we come together, we can provide real support to one another, including our immigrant families, the people who we know that we can make people feel safer, which will make our neighborhood feel stronger and more vibrant. I want to say thank you to Senator Padilla's office for partnering with us on this. I also want to say thank you to our partners and our panelists from the Department of Justice, the Mexican Consulate's office, excuse me, the ACLU, and Alliance San Diego. And then also thank you to Supervisor Martha Cardenas Singh, Mayor Stephen Hernandez, Mayor Michael Lewin, and Councilmember Oscar Ortiz. Thank you all for standing with immigrant families with our office. At its core tonight is about the idea that knowledge is power. As Roberto said, no one should feel less safe or alone because they do not know what their rights are. So let's make sure that we do what we can, not just to learn what we can tonight, but to share this information so that our entire community is stronger. And with that, we'll begin our program, and I'll hand it over to Imperial County Supervisor Martha Cardenas Singh.
Thank you, everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity as an Imperial County Board of Supervisors. I want to first recognize the value of the importance of this space where community can come together to learn, ask questions, and to be empowered with the information about protecting our rights. It is our responsibility as public servants to ensure that our residents, their rights, the importance to feel safe is being protected, whether that's in a workplace, at school, in housing, or when interacting with government agencies. Your rights matter. And today it's about ensuring that you know how to protect them. I would like to thank all of our partner experts who will be sharing such valuable information to provide true clarity and guidance about what our rights are. With that, I look forward to the information that will be before us. And most importantly, I want to share that I'm honored to welcome our speakers who will walk us through all the key steps in protecting our rights and giving us all the information required. Thank you for being here and being a part of a stronger, more informed community. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. I will be passing it on. I'll be passing it on next to City of Calipatria Mayor Michael Llewellyn.
All right. Well, firstly, I just wanted to wish everyone a good evening. My name is Michael Llewellyn, and I'm honored to serve as the mayor of Calipatria down here in Imperial County, right next to the border. We are here today at an extremely critical time. Across our nation, we've seen unprecedented attacks on our democracy and our immigrant communities. These attacks don't just target large cities or border regions. They affect all of us, from the smallest rural towns to our largest urban centers. Just a few months ago, the city of Calipatria itself received a letter from the Trump administration threatening to cut all of our federal funding simply because of our sanctuary status. That was a clear reminder that when immigrant rights are under attack, the well-being of all of our communities are at stake. Now, we cannot rely on the federal government anymore, so it is up to us to stay informed and protect those around us. That's why it's so important for you to join us today as we prepare to defend our communities and our state. I just wanted to thank Senator Padilla and his amazing team for being with us and for continuing to defend the dignity and rights of every member of our community. Together, we're stronger, and together we will not back down. Once again, this is Mayor Michael Llewellyn, and I'm honored to be here with you all.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll now go to Indio City Council Member Oscar Ortiz.
Thank you, Roberto. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Buenas tardes. Thank you all for joining us for this extremely important matter. My name is Oscar Ortiz. I'm an immigrant. I'm from Mexicali, and I'm a council member in the city of Indio. In India, we've been doing our best to share accurate information about raids, to speak out publicly, opposing the human rights abuses against our people, and to get families the resources they need to improve their safety and legal protections. We're also working closely with our police to make it clear to all of our residents that we're here to protect them regardless of their immigration status. I want to thank all the organizers and officials who are here helping our community during these times, including State Senator Padilla and his staff for speaking loud and clear against the fascism we're seeing today in America. I look forward to working alongside all of you towards the freedom, equality, and justice for our immigrant community. Please feel free to reach out if we can be of any help out here in Indio, and thank you for inviting me to be here with you today. I'll pass it back to you, Roberto.
Thank you so much, Oscar. I will actually turn it to Rosanna Javier from Senator Padilla's office.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rosanna Javier, and I'm a district representative for the office of Senator Steve Padilla. It's my honor to introduce tonight's incredible community partners, each of whom will share valuable information and resources to help us better understand and navigate encounters with immigration enforcement. To begin, I'd like to welcome Patricia Acosta, External Affairs Manager from the California Department of Justice, Office of the Attorney General, Rob Bonta. Patricia will be sharing the many immigration resources and tools available through the department to support our community. Patricia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here among so many leaders and community activists. Thank you, Senator Padilla and Council Member Hilo Rivera for inviting the California Department of Justice to join this important forum. My name is Pat Acosta, as was said. I am an External Affairs Manager for the Office of Attorney General Rob Bonta for the Southern California region, which encompasses San Diego down to the furthest south. Today, I will be reviewing our immigration and hate crime Know Your Rights resources that we have available in the Department of Justice. As we face the second Trump administration, Attorney General Rob Bonta stands ready to protect our immigrant families, our students, and our schools. The message is very clear. Immigrants are the backbone of our communities, and every child deserves a safe place to learn and grow free from fear. That's why Attorney General Bonta issued a set of resources for schools, educators, and families, which include Know Your Rights information for students and families about their educational protections. These are resources that indicate that all children have a constitutional right to a free public education, no matter their immigration status. Their personal information is protected by law, and every student has the right to be free from discrimination, harassment, and intimidation based on their real or perceived immigration status. Another guide is the practical guide for school officials on what to do if an immigration officer comes to campus, which includes model policies for K-12 schools to make sure they are in compliance with California law. This says that schools are meant to be safe havens, not sites of fear. If immigration officers show up at a campus, schools should notify administrators, request credentials, and contact our office at immigration@doj.ca.gov. These resources are available in multiple languages and are also on our website at oag.ca.gov, immigrant resources. Another guide is protect yourself from immigration scams. This is very important because we've seen growth in this area. You always want to make sure to go to a legitimate legal aid organization for free help or legal help. Keep your original documents in a safe place. Do not carry them with you unless you have, for example, if you have a passport. We just had recently National Night Out in San Diego, and unfortunately there was a gentleman who was carrying his passport. He did not have a card, he lost his passport. I understand that you want to carry your passport. Especially if you just recently became a nationalized citizen, but it's important to please keep those in safe places and maybe have a card, which I believe costs $35 to $40. Do not hire an immigration consultant or notary. Do not give money or personal information to anyone who calls, texts, or emails claiming that there is a problem with your immigration matter. Guidance and model policies for public institutions such as superior courts, healthcare facilities, schools, and shelters. These guides are best practices in avoiding the use of state and local resources to support civil immigration enforcement. Bulletins and guidance to assist state and local enforcement agencies, prosecutors, and defense counsel in complying with state law regardless of changes coming from the Trump administration. These are all guidances. Now, in terms of hate crime resources, unfortunately, in light of the president's administration's negative rhetoric and the upstick in hostility towards immigrant communities, our office has also issued updated guidance and resources for law enforcement, prosecutors, and victims of crime. I want to take this moment to say, if you are witnessing or have witnessed or are a victim of hate crime, you should report it to your local law enforcement agency. And for more information about our hate crime resources, please visit our website, oag.ca.gov/hate-crimes. Other resources that we have, which is on our second slide, we have resources such as to visit Law Help California and Immigration Law Help to find free and low-cost legal assistance to you. If you believe your rights are being violated, please report it to the Department of Justice. Also, if you believe you were subject to discrimination, harassment, or retaliation, please also contact the Department of Civil Rights at civilrights.california.gov complaint process. This is all in our website as well. In this part of a broader commitment, Attorney General Bonta and our office are 100% committed to our communities. In many of our immigration-related lawsuits, we've already secured early positive results. For example, we've obtained preliminary injunctions blocking some of the Trump administration's most harmful actions, attempts to end birthright citizenship, unlawful efforts to impose immigration enforcement conditions on Department of Transportation grants, and most importantly, the Medicaid data sharing lawsuit, where we stopped harmful federal outreach that would have jeopardized care for immigrant communities. These early wins matter. Some cases take months, others can take years, which is why it's critical that courts have granted our request for temporary restraining orders. Those injunctions mean that while the case moves forward, the president's harmful actions are put on hold and do not go into effect. The bottom line is, we don't just file lawsuits, we deliver real immediate protections for Californians. At a time when fear and uncertainty are running high, now you are not alone. Please know that. AG Bonta and California, the DOJ, are here to support you, to stand with you, and to fight for you. Please reach out to our offices. My office is the External Affairs Office. My email is patricia.acosta@doj.ca.gov, or you can contact our Office of Community Affairs, Response, and Engagement, which is car@doj.gov, for any questions or any concerns that you might have, whether it's you or a family member. And lastly, please do not forget to always contact our immigration@doj.ca.gov for any immigration matters or concerns. Once again, thank you so much for having me. Please know that our doors are always open to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia, for highlighting the tools available at the state level. We really appreciate it. Building on that, it's important to also understand how we can prepare locally. That's where our next speaker, Hector Oviedo, Legal Rights Manager at Alliance San Diego, comes in. Hector will walk us through immigration rights and preparedness plans designed to keep everyone informed and empowered. Hector, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting Alliance San Diego to participate in this wonderful opportunity for everyone to learn. My name is Hector Oviedo, and I'll be trying to condense some of the content we promote in the community to a small segment. Next slide, please. So just a little tidbit of who Alliance San Diego is. We're a nonprofit in San Diego, California. Our mission is to create an inclusive democracy where everyone can exercise their human dignity in an environment of harmony, safety, equality, and justice. And we believe that we do that by protecting civil and human rights, advocating for policies, communicating strategically, engaging communities, and developing leaders. Next slide, please. So today you're talking to one branch of the tree that is Alliance San Diego, and that's the legal rights team. We are a Department of Justice accredited organization, and we provide legal services at free cost to the community. And we are a staff team of 4. We have Michelle Soleri, our director and an immigration attorney. Myself, Hector Oviedo, I'm a legal rights manager and a fully accredited representative with the Department of Justice. And we have Andrea Tecpoyotl Tepale and Yolanda Villa, who are partially accredited representatives before the Department of Justice. Next, please. So know your rights. Next, please. It's very important to understand that we are in a time where our rights are being challenged. And so a lot of what I'm going to say to you, you might have already heard. And a lot of what I'm going to say to you, you might think, well, those are supposed to be my rights, but what I'm seeing in the community is not what's happening. And I understand that makes it difficult to have these sorts of conversations, and to sometimes even believe the content we are telling you. But what I'm hoping to do with this information is inform that you do have these rights, and that if those rights are not being respected, that there's something to do about that. And so we want to start with some very basic rights that everyone, regardless of immigration status, has. And that's our Fourth Amendment rights. So the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution recognizes the right of every person to be free of an unreasonable search and to ask for a warrant to justify the search. So this is very important nowadays during the immigration enforcement that we're seeing with the Trump administration, where ICE agents are trying to come into every space without any warrant, or lying about having a warrant. Next slide, please. So what we want to do with this is we want to be vocal on asking for a warrant. We want to make sure that the agent knows that we are informed that the only way that they can have a search on us is if they have a warrant. So if agents come to your door, it's very important to not open that door. Agents you can ask the agent to identify themselves and show you a judicial warrant under the door or through a window. So it's very important if an ICE officer or multiple ICE officers knock on your door. I know the first reaction is to open, but during these times and in certain communities, what we have to do is really not open the door, ask who it is, and if you see that it's officers, ask them to identify yourselves. So we have some quotes here. Please identify yourselves. I do not have to let you in. If you do not have a judicial warrant from a court signed by a judge with this address on it. So ICE using warrants that are not legitimate isn't a new practice, unfortunately. What's happening right now is that it's happening way more often than it was before, but ICE has always been notoriously known for not having warrants and trying to come into people's spaces. So it's very important that you ask for that warrant. Next slide, please. So I have here two examples of different warrants and how you can try to identify which one is legitimate and which one is not. So let's start with the one that is legitimate, a judicial warrant. The biggest distinction here is who the warrant is with or who's making the warrant. What you will want to see is that the warrant is issued from the United States District Court. It will say the word coordinate, so that's a very easy identifiable part. And it will have it will be signed by the judge on the bottom, and it would have the address where the warrant is for, the name of the person they're looking, and even the scope of the search in the warrant. So they're very specific. Now, the one on the right is an administrative warrant that ICE themselves issues. And so, as you see here, it doesn't say court, it says U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So that's red flag number one, right? So it's not issued by a court, it's issued by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, usually titled Warrant for Arrest of Alien. And that's really ICE giving themselves warrants to go out and search for a community. This is not a valid warrant to enter under any circumstances in any situation. And what we've seen before is ICE officer comes to a door, they ask for a warrant, the officer shows the administrative warrant, and unfortunately the community member might be uninformed and say, okay, they have a warrant, I'm gonna let them in. And a lot of times it's an administrative warrant. And so we need to know that we need to differentiate between the judicial warrant and the administrative warrant. Easiest way to do it is if it doesn't have the word coordinate, it's not a legit warrant. Next slide, please. Now, like I said, sometimes they don't listen to any of that either way. And unfortunately, ICE agents have been notorious to come in without a warrant. And so if that does happen, it's very important to try to remain calm, to not try to stop them physically. You have to out loud tell them that they don't have the permission to be in there. So we added some scenarios or some quotations of what you could say. You do not have my permission to enter. You do not have my permission to search for anything or anyone not listed on the judicial warrant. So these are things you say out loud. And you also need to be aware of the situation you're in and the aggression that the officer might or might not have, because you also want to be able to record it. I always suggest recording in a manner where it could be automatically uploaded to a cloud, because we never know if agents will snatch somebody's phone and try to delete it. But all of this is important to know, because if they entered without a warrant, that is something that will be discussed in the person's removal proceedings in immigration court. And so if there was any illegal entry to a property and somebody was placed in removal proceedings in an illegal manner, then that could work in your favor when you're talking to an immigration judge. Next slide, please. So at work and at school, in California, agents can enter public spaces, but they should have a judicial warrant or the consent of a person in charge of premises. So one way I like to think about it is they can enter where you can enter, right? So if you are going to the doctor, you can enter the lobby, but you can't just go into the doctor's office or a room where they're doing treatment. Same thing with ICE officers. They can enter public spaces, but if they want to be in specific premises or start searching for people in premises, they need that judicial warrant. And it's very important for the school or the work or even the church to be in agreement to have a contingency plan. If something like this happens, what is going to be the course of action that staff takes? Is there somebody on staff that's the assigned person to speak to the agents? So it's something that you need to think about when dealing with ICE agents in public spaces. Next slide, please. So beware of lies. They changed the picture for me. I had Pinocchio in there on my previous one. So agents lie a lot about who they're looking for, about having a warrant, and that's something that we need to be aware of. They might also threaten you. We've seen recently where agents have purposely shoved into individuals that are recording, so that it looks like they're interfering. And once there's that physical touch, they're saying you're interfering, so that you're subject to arrest now as well. So you need to be, even as an ally, be very aware of your space, be very aware of the distance between you and the agent, because we've seen them go a little AWOL recently with what they can and can't do. So you just need to watch out for yourself as well, if you are not in a situation of being detained yourself. And no matter what, it's always a good idea to be out loud saying, you need to see this warrant, I'm not letting you into these premises, etc. Next slide, please. So something very common that this also is not just for immigration, but overall, the issue of am I free to go? You can always ask an officer or immigration or police officer, am I free to go? You can also ask, am I being detained? And if they say you are, you have to ask why. Why am I being detained? If they say you're not being detained, then ask again, am I free to go? And if they do say you're not being detained and you're free to go, then leave in a polite and peaceful way. And you can repeat these questions until you are free to go. And sometimes it might sound like you're going in circles, but it's something that you have to do when you're exercising your rights. Am I being detained? No. Am I free to go? No. Am I being detained? No. Am I free to go? No. And you repeat this. And again, if they're doing something illegal and this case gets taken to court, all of this is going to add to your case. So it's not without any value in you exercising your rights. Next slide, please. So one more amendment we're going to cover, the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution protects your right to be silent, to not incriminate yourself, and to have access to due process. Sorry. Next slide, please. A very important Fifth Amendment. It's always a really great idea to remain silent, especially in these situations. You do have the right to speak to an attorney or to your country's consulate if it is safe to do so, in asylum context, I say. But for most of the people, you do have the right to speak to your attorney, to your consulate before saying anything. It's very important to not lie to immigration officers and never to present false documents, because that could, again, be very detrimental to a case that you might have. And it's really easy to tell the officers, I am exercising my right to remain silent. I would like to speak to an attorney before speaking with you. You literally don't have to tell them anything. Next slide, please. Something important to note is that for everyone that has been in the United States for less than 2 years, without any form of legal status, this population could be subject to expedited removal without access to court, and that can actually happen very quickly. And so anyone that has been here from August 2023 and before is able to ask for a judge and speak to a court to see if you can have a case here and removal proceedings. But if you entered 1 year ago, you are subject to expedited removal. And so a quick way to have evidence that you have been here for 2 years is if you have a California driver's license or identification and it was issued more than 2 years ago, then carry that. Next slide, please. And, the reality is that people are being deported and families are being harmed. And our work here is to stop it when we can, and when we cannot, to get people the information they need to execute in an emergency. And so I know that I jam-packed this information, but I'm going to try to give you some more in the next couple of minutes I have. Next slide, please. So now I want to talk really quickly about emergency preparedness plan. Next slide, please. This is just a conversation that I think is very important for multi-status families to have. So we need families to be aware of each other's immigration status, because what happens if a spouse is a U.S. citizen, another spouse is undocumented, some kids have DACA, some kids are citizens. It's a mixed status. And so if something were to happen to one family member or to both parents, what is going to happen to the children? So the first is to have that conversation with your family so that everyone's aware. And an emergency plan entails you gathering important documents and having them in one place. So things like birth certificates, passports, any doctor documents or information about contact information of family members or insurance plans or any resources, or even documents like passports, have it all in one protected binder. And sit down with the family and talk about the family schedule, talk about what needs to happen if one of or two of the parents are detained by immigration. Next slide, please. So really quickly, for parents, there are 3 levels of assigning someone to take care of your child if you are detained. One is a verbal consent, which is very not formal. The second one is this caregiver's affidavit. This is publicly available through the state of California and is valid for 1 year and doesn't need to be notarized. And this document, you can fill it out and you give a family member that affidavit legal protection to be able to pick up your kids from school, to take their kids to the doctor, to make some medical decisions if the kids are sick. And it does not affect the rights of the parent to that minor. It only doesn't allow you to travel and is valid for 1 year. So it's very good to have in that binder prepared. Next slide, please. Now, for the emergency plan, like I said, it's important to put it all together. Identified someone to care for children and tell children who to call, where to go. Protect phone with password, not with face or fingerprint, so the other family can access. Know what your A number is if you have it, so that your family can locate you using the ICE locator, and find out about legal options now from a trusted legal service provider, and talk about the plan in a calm way with everyone. Next slide, please. So sorry I rushed through that. These are usually 2-hour presentations. A quick nitbit about Alliance San Diego. Like I said, we provide legal representation for clients all across California. So our primary clientele is obviously San Diego County, but we also help people from Imperial County, and even if they're like in Indio. So I know that I have people in Imperial and people in Indio, and I am also from Mexicali, so I'm also from the border region. And we are very happy to offer this help for free. I know especially in Imperial, there's not a lot of support and legal organizations that do this work for free. So please reach out. This is our phone number. This is our email. We have consults twice a month at free cost. You're never going to pay a fee for our services. So thank you, for the opportunity to be able to speak again. I am sorry that it was so rushed, but I hope if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them at the end.
Thank you very much, Hector. Many in our community also rely on direct support from their home country's representatives. We're fortunate to have Licenciada Maritza Valdez Sanchez from the Department of Protection and Legal Affairs at the Mexican Consulate here to share information, resources, and services that the consulate provides to community members. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Maritza.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. On behalf of Ambassador Alicia Kerber, we're very honored to be part of this workshop and especially to talk to you about what your consulate does for you. So initially, I think that first slide. A consulate is the Mexican government office whose main mission is to protect the rights and interests of Mexican nationals. And we have several departments at the consulate, and I think the most commonly known is the consular service departments, where you can get documentation, civil registry, and notary. You can go and get your passport, consular ID, voting cards, birth registration, marriage licenses. But we do also have a community affairs department where there are various programs that are implemented on topics of education, culture, economic development. But one of the departments that we have, and it's exactly where I'm in, it's the Department of Protection and Legal Affairs. So this department is responsible to protect the rights and interests of Mexican citizens who are in a host country, in this case, in the United States. You can be either traveling or that you reside in the host country. In the case of our consulate, we give these services to Mexican nationals that reside in the San Diego County. So, regardless of their legal status, we focus on issues that pertain to immigration, human rights, criminal law, administrative law, labor law, and family law. So, in this Department of Protection and Legal Affairs, we give legal orientation and legal advice. We do have attorneys that are consultants for the consulate, and we usually give free consultations by referral with those group of attorneys. And some of the cases are studied and are submitted to be part of our program of external legal advice. And if the case is approved, then that case can be either partially or completely covered by the consulate related to the costs of the attorney services. So we do have on the next slide some of the information resources for Mexican nationals that are available 24/7. The first one, it's an app that's called Mi Consul Mex. So this app is for Mexican nationals that they can use to make either notify of an arrest or deportation, localize a missing person, and report discrimination, abuse, and racially motivated attacks. So this app has been very helpful for people to try and localize a missing family member or a family member they know they tried to either cross the border or they were here on an undocumented status and try to localize if they were actually detained by an immigration authority. The other resource that we have is the a call center that operates from our consulate in Tucson, Arizona, but it's available nationwide. So it says SIAM. So this is a Center of Information and Assistance for Mexicans. And this center provides information regarding latest news on immigration, preventative protection, and consular assistance and protection. And it is available 24 hours, 7 days a week. This center receives the information, but if the person is or the person was detained in San Diego, they automatically refer it to the consulate in San Diego. So we would be able to go and do a visit to interview the person. It's part of the other services that we have at this department is to do the visits at the detention centers. So when we receive a notification either from the app or the call center, or we receive a consular notification, we go and visit the Mexican nationals that are in the detention centers here in San Diego County, just to know about their physical integrity, what their legal situation is, or if they need any assistance from the consulate. On the next slide, we talk about the importance of the consular notification. So this consular notification, this is a vital right for foreign nationals. Every Mexican national has the right to consular notification if they are arrested or detained. This does not replace legal defense, but it is a very important tool because it allows the consulates to be informed of an arrest or a detention of a Mexican citizen in the host country. So in this case, when we receive this notification is when we can specifically go and ask to interview a Mexican citizen. The officers must notify our office of an arrest or detention if consented. This office can provide appropriate consular services and assistance and ensure the rights of the individuals are always respected in accordance with the law. So in this second area, it says that the officers must notify our office of an arrest if consented. So in the next slide, we show an example of what is the information that a consular notification form must look like. On this first lines, it should always make sure that you tell them to add the Consulate of Mexico in where you are. If you're in San Diego, you should say, oh, I want to notify Consulate of Mexico in San Diego. If you're in Houston, well, you would notify the Consulate of Mexico in Houston. And the officers, they should know the address and phone number, so they will automatically just fill out that information. And on this other side at the bottom, you must just write down the date or tell them to let us know the date when you were arrested. So it would say like on this date, we arrested the following foreign national whom we understand to be a national of your country with your full legal name, record number, place, and date of birth. And they will ask you if you wish that they notify the consulate to receive assistance. So we always recommend for you to select yes when it comes to the Mexican consulate. And the second, if you wish for the consulate to be contacted to give assistance to you, you always should say yes. It's just like in English and Spanish, and just sign it and they will send that to us. They usually give us calls. So if you at any point you are detained by an immigration officer, they should give you an option to call right away in the first hours of the detention, and that is when we get a notification by phone. If that doesn't happen, then you can ask for this form after, and they would fax that to our consular offices. So we always encourage people to select yes when they ask you if you wish to notify the consulate. We are a form of communication also with your family members. If anything happens, we can notify them about your situation. We can refer them to the attorneys or any other resources that they need. So this is the email from our department, Protección SDI@sre.gov.mx. And here are other information on our phones. We have our office phone, and we also have an emergency line for San Diego that's 24/7. So if anything happens, you can call this number, the 619-843-6399. And there's always going to be someone that's going to answer that phone if you are specifically in San Diego. If not, you can always use the Center of Information and Assistance to Mexicans. That's a nationwide service. And when we receive calls trying to localize a family member and they don't really know what part of the United States they were, we always recommend for people to call the Center of Information and Mexican Assistance because they have a nationwide system to locate Mexican nationals. And well, yeah, that's about it. Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you, Maritza, for sharing these important consular resources. We appreciate it. Alongside immigration rights, it's equally vital to know our rights in moments of civic action. To close our presentations, I'd like to introduce Brandon Sigwa, Senior Policy Advocate with the Advancing Justice team at the ACLU of San Diego and Imperial Counties. Brandon will be discussing protesters' rights and how we can exercise them safely and effectively. We're ready when you are, Brandon.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Christopher Sigwa, and as Rosanna said, I am the Senior Policy Advocate for the Advancing Justice team of the ACLU of San Diego and Imperial Counties. Today, I'll be providing a brief overview of free speech and protest rights. Next slide, please. So the information we are providing today is meant to be a general overview. For more specific information, you should review your institution's policies and local or state laws related to speech that could be applicable. This information is not intended to be legal advice. Everyone's situation is different. So if you have any concerns or specific questions about your situation, you should have a private conversation with an attorney. Next slide, please. Briefly, here is an overview of our agenda. Now, before I go further, I do want to acknowledge that although we will be covering our rights, we know that public officials, including currently the Trump administration, do not always comply with our Constitution. That is why organizations like the ACLU, courts, and other important stakeholders exist. So what we want to do today is give you a baseline understanding of your free speech and protest rights. So one, you know what your rights are. And two, to make us all more informed. So when we are in situations when these issues come up, or when we read news articles about the Trump administration's detention of, say, pro-Palestinian protesters, we can identify that these are constitutional violations, and that something is not just unjust, but also illegal. Next slide, please. And next slide after that. The California Constitution and the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution offer comprehensive free speech protections, even for unpopular, controversial, political, or deeply offensive speech. Constitutional protections for free speech mean that the government and public officials, including officials at public universities, cannot establish or enforce rules based solely on protected expression. Now, generally, the First Amendment does not constrain the actions of private parties. However, there are some exceptions. For example, the same protections I just mentioned with respect to government officials apply at California's private colleges and universities because of a statute called the Leonard Law. Under this law, private schools cannot discipline students for conduct that would be protected by the First Amendment if it occurred off campus. Federal and state courts have consistently emphasized the importance of protecting free speech rights. Indeed, in the seminal First Amendment case, New York Times v. Sullivan, the U.S. Supreme Court noted that there is a profound national commitment to the principle that debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, and wide open, and that it may well include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks on government and public officials. Next slide, please. The First Amendment protects your right to express your views, even if they are unpopular, though through spoken, written, and symbolic words, protest, and making demands of the government. Free speech protections do not extend everything. In particular, they do not extend to libel, slander, or obscenity, true threats, or threatening another person with death or serious bodily harm, or incitement of imminent violence and lawless action. Next slide, please. In the next few slides, we are going to talk a little bit about what the government is allowed to do to regulate free speech activities. But I do want to emphasize that generally, you do not need any sort of permission to engage in free speech activities in public. And if you take part in a protest, you can distribute flyers on public sidewalks, parks, and plazas, picket and protest on these same locations, so long as you are not blocking sidewalks or building entrances, and chant or sing protest songs in public spaces. But we want to make you aware of what the government can do to regulate competing uses of public spaces because protesters are sharing space with other members of the public. Next slide, please. Depending on where you plan to express yourself, what you say will be more or less protected. Your rights are strongest, as I already alluded to, in spaces like public streets, sidewalks, and parks. This is because generally, the more public an area is, the stronger the government's justification must be to restrict your right to free expression. Next slide, please. The following types of speech restrictions are, depending on the forum, which we'll discuss shortly, are unconstitutional, and these are things you want to look out for. Content-based restrictions, they're unconstitutional in public forums like sidewalks, parks, etc. limits speech based on its subject matter. For example, no speech about abortion allowed. Viewpoint-based restrictions are always unconstitutional. These are limits on speech based on ideology or perspective. For example, only pro-choice speech allowed. Another recent example we've seen is Trump administration targeting non-citizen students and scholars because of their pro-Palestinian viewpoint. Next slide, please. A traditional public forum is a space open for public speech activities. This includes public streets, sidewalks, and parks. Governments can also designate a place as a public forum. Common examples include public auditoriums and the steps of City Hall. Governments can restrict speech only if the restriction is content neutral, tied to a significant interest, and reasonable as to time, place, and manner. They must also leave open good alternatives for protected speech. Example, a city could require that all demonstrations in a park take place between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., or that demonstrations not block building entrances. Next slide, please. A limited public forum is a space where the government chooses to allow speech for certain groups or for certain subjects. The government may restrict speech in these spaces so long as the restrictions aren't based on viewpoint, so they can be based on content. Example, a city can make a bulletin board outside of City Hall available for advertising government events, but prohibit signage about other matters. Next slide, please. A non-public forum is a government-owned space not typically available for public expression. Speech restrictions only need to be viewpoint neutral and reasonable, depending on how the space is intended to be used. Example, the government may prohibit protests inside courthouses, airport terminals, and other government buildings. Next slide, please. You don't have a right to engage in free speech activities on private property unless you are the property owner or have the owner's permission. Now, this doesn't mean you need permission to speak every time you are on private property. It simply means that the government does not affirmatively protect your right to speak at, say, your friend's house, and that your friend can have you leave their house if they don't like what you're saying. Shopping malls in California are the one exception. Your speech rights there are protected so long as your activity doesn't interfere with the mall's primary commercial purpose. Next slide, please. Considerations beyond speech. Next slide. Noise. Check your local regulations, but generally you may use amplification devices so long as your intent is to communicate your message, not disturb the peace. Leafleting and soliciting. You can approach willing passerby by handing them a leaflet, asking them to sign a petition or asking them for money, but you may not harass them. Different rules apply outside entry to health clinics, places of worship, or funeral sites. Tabling. You can use tables or news racks to display materials, subject to usual time, place, and manner TPM restrictions, but the local government or university TPM policy can prohibit you from blocking the sidewalk. Next slide, please. Next slide again. Protesting civil disobedience and limits on police power. Next slide. Officials and law enforcement generally may not prohibit an event based on a concern that some may engage in illegal activity or punish peaceful speakers if a listener's reaction turns violent. So you decide to protest in a public forum. You or the protest organizer has a permit. What should you know once you are there? First, make sure to look out for each other and be mindful of the privileges and vulnerabilities, including race or immigration status of yourself and those around you. Second, there might be counter-protesters there. Counter-protester may not lawfully silence or substantially disrupt another person's protected speech. They may, however, picket outside an event or hold up signs. Next slide. Perfect. Let's briefly cover what's known as civil disobedience. Civil disobedience is the active refusal to comply with certain laws as a form of protest. If you are planning to engage in a sit-in, block an intersection, or conduct some other unlawful act, learn about the practical consequences of arrest and university discipline. You'll be receiving a follow-up email with links to Know Your Rights materials, including the things we've discussed today, and additional information we weren't able to cover. We will also be providing the links at the end of this presentation as well. Importantly, there is no right to engage in civil disobedience, but you still have other rights if you do engage in civil disobedience, such as due process, the right to be free from unreasonable force by law enforcement, and the right to not self-incriminate. Next slide, please. So back to your protest rights. Let's discuss limits on police power. As long as you are observing reasonable time, place, manner restrictions, the police may not break up a gathering unless there is a clear and present danger of a riot or other immediate threat to public safety. If officers give a dispersal order that is an order for folks to leave a protest site and not return, they must provide actual notice of the order and allow a reasonable opportunity to comply. Note that police may use reasonable force to break up a gathering or arrest a person violating the law. Next slide, please. If you're exercising your right to free speech lawfully and peacefully, you should not be arrested. Law enforcement officers are authorized to make an arrest if they have probable cause to believe you are engaged in some unlawful conduct. Just because you are arrested does not mean that charges will be filed against you. What happens next will depend on many factors specific to your case. If arrested, you may have to state your name and address, but you do not have to answer and should not answer any questions about your immigration status or the incident leading to your arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Use it. You also have the right to legal counsel. Next slide, please. Now, before we close out discussions specifically on protests, let's briefly discuss your right to film the police. The First Amendment generally protects your right to openly film government officials engaged in their official duties in a public place. This practice can be a valuable tactic in protecting your right to speech and for holding law enforcement accountable if something goes wrong. It is important to record openly and to maintain a safe distance from police. You should avoid interfering with law enforcement activity if you can. Next slide, please. Free speech and immigration status. Next slide. The First Amendment's protections apply equally to everyone inside the United States, regardless of a speaker's immigration status. However, if a speaker is subject to school discipline or arrest, non-citizens may face unique risks that affect their immigration status. The Trump administration has engaged in unlawful retaliatory arrests, detentions, and attempts to deport non-citizens for their speech. These actions are currently being challenged in the court. The administration has also indicated they will be monitoring social media accounts of non-citizens. For these reasons, you should consult with an immigration attorney for any concerns. Next slide, please. When should you contact the ACLU? Next slide. So you should contact the ACLU if your speech is being treated differently than speech of the opposite view, your speech is restricted or punished even though you think you followed all the relevant campus rules, you are forced to leave a lawful protest for reasons that don't seem fair or reasonable, or you're being held responsible for acts by other protesters that you did not do. You are arrested for failing to follow an unclear dispersal order or because you didn't have enough time to comply with the order. Next slide, please. You experience aggressive crowd control tactics like tear gas or rubber bullets. Your property is taken by an official during a protest and you are having trouble getting it back. Your campus employment or housing is being threatened due to your participation in protests. And if you do need to contact us, you can scan the screen for ACLU SDIC's legal intake website. And at this time, we can also drop the links to the resources. So there's a link for the Know Your Rights, free speech, protest, and demonstration, the things that we discussed today. There's additional information there that I was not able to cover in the time that I had today. There's the link to the legal intake website. There's also our Immigrant Rights Resource Hub in English and in Spanish. And with that, I believe we can move on to the Q&A portion. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Brandon. So we're gonna jump into our Q&A here. So we're gonna go first to the first question, and this is for the panelists and also any electeds that want to answer this question. So the first question I have for the group is, what is being done locally and at the state level to limit ICE activity near schools, churches, and courts besides SB 54? Anyone wants to answer, just feel free to speak.
So I can speak up very briefly. Something that the ACLU is partnering with SDOP on, that's the San Diego Organizing Project, is neighborhood solidarity committees. So they're different in different neighborhoods and different jurisdictions, and they are answering the circumstances in those specific neighborhoods, so they look different depending where you are. But some of the things that are being implemented throughout San Diego are kind of like security forces surrounding, for example, like schools, right? To make sure that people can safely and freely take their kids to school and have them engage in education and then leave those sites as well. Hopefully without being harassed by any federal agents or deportation officials.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I'm actually going to go to the next one. And this is for everyone. Are there any limitations to our rights if we are within 100 miles of a port of entry?
Well, I can try to take a stab at this one.
Oh,
Are there any limitations to our rights if we're within 100 miles of a port of entry? So unfortunately, within 100 miles of a border, Border Patrol does have extra rights when it comes to being able to try to search someone, obviously with a warrant. And it doesn't only include the port of entry. Unfortunately, it's 100 miles within the borders of the United States. So that's counting from the coast to going from west to east. So as you can imagine, most of California falls into this area. That actually has it's been tried to be expanded to the whole USA, but for now, California has always been subject to most of the state being within the 100 miles of the border. So you can imagine from Tijuana up and from any beach in California east 100 miles, that's the jurisdiction that Border Patrol has to run their operations.
thank you, Hector, for that answer. I'm actually going to go back to Councilmember Elo Rivera for what is at the local level that we are doing. So I'll pass it off to Councilmember Elo Rivera for that.
Thanks, Roberto, and thank you again to all our panelists for everything that you all offered. One of the things that so I'm going to put this in kind of two categories, and Brandon was talking about a really important piece, and that's what we're doing in the community. And I think in local government, we have a responsibility to support those efforts to the greatest extent possible. That's super important for sure, but that doesn't mean that we don't have responsibilities in local government to do everything that we can to help folks assert their rights from the strongest ground possible. And so in the city of San Diego, in partnership with some other folks around the region, we're looking forward next month to bringing forward an ordinance that we think will provide stronger ground for people to stand on to assert the constitutional rights that we all have. And so that last question was an interesting one because there was some nuance to it. The question was, about whether or not there's fewer rights because we live within 100 miles of a border. And it's not that we have fewer rights, it's that there's additional authority that the federal government has. And so with all of those components in mind, we need to think very creatively about what we can do as cities and local government, school districts, in partnership with one another to ensure that, one, we're not being complicit in reducing folks' rights, in working in coordination with folks who want to violate our community's rights, and again, figuring out what we can do as jurisdictions to give people the strongest ground possible to assert the rights that we all have.
Thank you, Councilmember Elo Rivera, for that. I do have a question in the chat, and this is for everyone as well. So if I have a legal residency card and I go to Mexico, is there any danger to my status when crossing back?
I can also answer that. So if you're a legal permanent resident, you are still allowed to use the benefits of your legal permanent residency. There should be no problem with a resident, sorry, coming back to the United States. Now, something that has been happening more often now, but has always been happening is residents have always been limited to travel only outside of the United States for 6 months at a time. So if a resident travels for more than 6 months, let's say 7 months, when coming back, they are subject to being questioned by immigration about abandonment of residency. And so a lot of the stories we hear about residents having troubles coming back is not just because Border Patrol and Customs is not allowing residents to return, but it's more specifically, did that person overstay outside and now they're being challenged at the port of entry? Did I abandon my residency? Where before they might have been a little bit more lenient in situations like this, now they're not. So we just have to make sure that we are aware of what our limitations and our rights are, dependent on the immigration status that we have. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Hector, for that question. We have a secondary question. For DACA recipients, are there any risk of facing immigration consequences if they are simply riding in a car with their undocumented parents and encounter law enforcement or immigration authorities? Also, feel free to chime in if you would like.
I could try to answer, but I don't want to be the only one answering. So if anyone wants to, go ahead. Okay, I can answer that. So if you're a DACA recipient and you are in the car with anyone that doesn't have status, and for whatever reason you are encountered by immigration authorities, you as a DACA recipient are not at risk. So your DACA status is a protection against deportation. So while the interaction that you have with the officers is not something I can guarantee. I can guarantee if they're going to be nice or strict or violent. What I can tell you is at the end of the day, you, the DACA recipient, are protected because of your status. So even if you do get detained and taken with everyone, once they check your immigration status, they'll most likely release you. But that would be the worst case scenario. The most probable outcome is that you, as somebody that's not a citizen, have to carry your proof of immigration status. So this is true for residents, this is true for DACA recipients, this is true for parolees with work permits. You have to carry that proof of status with you. So in that scenario, you would give the officer your work permit and you will probably be released. But I can't guarantee about other people in the car that don't have immigration status. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I want to go a little bit back in terms of the local level. A lot of folks have been asking, how can I support, how can I help my community in this sense? So if any electeds or anyone in general, how does someone get involved in your organization, or what are some steps that folks can take that could be of help for folks that are experiencing some of these issues?
I usually recommend to look for who's already doing the work in your region. Look for people who are doing really great work with immigrants and try to help them out first before, trying to start a new organization or a new method. That's usually my method. So I usually share people to other great organizations out here in the region. One of them being TODEC out here, who does really great work. So learning from others who are already doing the work, I think, is an important first step there.
And, not to repeat what I said before, but those neighborhood solidarity committees are doing really good work. Like some of the things they're organizing are helping people get groceries that are concerned about, going out in public because they're worried about running into federal authorities. They're also helping people get connected to different resources. And we also have, I don't recall how often it is, but we have a meeting of all representatives of the Neighborhood Solidarity Committee so they can come together and exchange notes, talk to each other about what's working, what isn't working, and potentially ways they could expand the things they're already doing in their neighborhoods and communities. So, to the extent that you can get connected to one of those, or if you would like to get connected to one of those, feel free. There's a link that was posted in the answer section for volunteer opportunities. I believe there's a section in the form where you could say that you're interested in getting involved in that as well. So it's it's under the question that says, is there any opportunity to volunteer with the ACLU or with Alliance SD without being an attorney?
Roberto, if I could just
I-
jump in really quickly on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember.
Yeah, so to kind of build on that and what we've heard already, there's the formal the way to do this formally, and then there's an informal piece which is very important right now. And for some of the folks who are watching this right now, I know that this is going to, you already know this already, but if you're someone who is wondering how can I support someone, I want to kind of lay out a scenario for you that's going to be very heavy, but is very real for a lot of families. And the reality that many folks are facing right now is that on a day-to-day basis, they don't know whether or not they're going to make it home from work or from dropping off their kids to school. And that's very heavy. And if we put ourselves in that situation, one of the questions that I would want to make sure that I felt as confident in as possible is that I would have as many people in my life who I could trust and who were going to be there for my family if I needed them. And so there's policies that can be passed, there's organizations that we can volunteer for, there's and contribute to. But just as important, if not more important than all of that, is building the sort of community that we need to take care of one another. So if you have a neighbor or a friend who is in a situation where they might be vulnerable, if you can be a person that they can depend on, and we're talking about the highest standards of trust and the sort of person that someone could entrust their kids with, at least for a couple of days. And that's very heavy, but that's very real. And so oftentimes we want to look for the sign up link and the contribution link. And again, I don't want to dismiss my responsibilities as a local legislator to pass policies, but I cannot overemphasize enough how important it is to build community in this moment and to be someone that our neighbors can rely on. And this is not, while immigrants are the most vulnerable group right now, there are many people who are and are going to be vulnerable over the next few years if the federal administration makes good on the promises that they've made. And so how do we build those relationships and be members of the sort of community where we take care of one another and we can be trusted with the people who are absolutely most precious to our friends and neighbors?
Thank you so much, Councilmember. Hector, go ahead.
Thank you, and I agree with everything everyone has said. We accept volunteers all the time, so if you do want to get your hands on in directly helping the immigrant community and their immigration cases, please send us an email, and we do have a process that we go through. But we'd be happy to take anyone who is interested in volunteering right now.
Perfect, thank you. And as we've talked about in this forum and throughout the presentation, it's been made very clear that the Trump administration does not care about our rights, does not really see value in immigrants. And so can some of you, if you are willing to share, talk about how that affects you mentally, and just kind of how do you kind of cope with seeing those images, and how do you as someone be able to kind of experience experience that with the person that is being detained, or how do we manage that? Because it's, in my sense, right, I had a family member being detained. It's super stressful, it's draining, it's a lot to deal with. And so how do you all kind of deal with that, or have you been in a situation where that has been at the forefront? So I'll let the panel, or if anyone wants to answer that.
I'll go ahead. I think the first time I actually learned about immigration detention was in 2010. So it's been 15 years now that we've been seeing these types of actions against our people, and being locked up, and all the human rights abuses, and just the lack of empathy for our community. And so over the years, I found different ways to manage that. But I think for the most part, I put all that effort into organizing, right? When I get angry, I organize more. I start, different, helping different campaigns, or I launch my own campaigns, or just using that negative energy and turning it into positive energy, right? And finding ways to work harder for our people. As a citizen now, I'm from Mexicali. I'm a citizen now, and I see that as a privilege, right? And that I have a certain amount of rights now that other people don't have. And I think that now more than ever, when things get rough, it's time for us to get louder, right? Those that do have that privilege, we need to get louder, get in the way, step up to the plate, while we are able to, and to fill in for that gap for those who can't speak up today. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Appreciate that. I'm going to jump into a couple more Q&A, since we've got only 7 more minutes. The first one is, if an immigration officer detains someone using excessive or unlawful force, at what point could that be considered unlawful detention or even kidnapping under the law? How can families or advocates distinguish between lawful enforcement and a violation of rights? Feel free to chime in. Go ahead.
I can go ahead and try to take a stab. It really depends. Immigration is case by case, so it's really hard to tell under what circumstances something could be considered excessive or unlawful force. So I think, and I know we're seeing it a lot in social media, right? All these instances of ICE detaining individuals using clear excessive and unlawful force while hiding their faces and their identities. But the only thing I can say is that every person that is not subject to expedited removal, which, like I said, is everyone that's been here for 2 years or more, has that right to speak to an immigration judge. And so while we can't do anything about somebody being detained that truly is undocumented, because if they are undocumented, that they are subject to removal, and that is either expedited removal or removal proceedings with a judge. And so when we're talking about removal proceedings with a judge, what we really want to make sure is that everything is documented and everything is presented to a judge, so that the judge and your attorney can argue about the rights and wrongs that were committed when somebody was detained. And so all that is very important, and that's why it's important to know our rights. But I know it's not a direct answer to that, but I just wanted to distinguish that everything that the officers are doing now that could be considered illegal, if that case has a court case, then that's something that's brought in court so that a judge can hear that. Thank you.
And Roberto, this is less for the individual who's, and I want to recognize, like, for the individual whose rights were violated or who was abused, that's unacceptable. And we should be able to do more in the moment. But I I don't want the inability to necessarily stop someone from being detained to discourage folks from documenting what is going on in our communities, because there's the accountability that we'd like to see in the moment, but then there's accountability over the long run. And there are abuses that are taking place in our community on a regular basis now that there needs to be accountability for at some point in time. And the better we document those, the more likely it is that that accountability will come. So whether or not this president and this administration will hold people accountable does not mean that they can't ever be held accountable. And so the better that we do as a community in documenting the abuses that are happening, one, the more likely it is that there'll be accountability, and two, the more likely it is that the public as a whole continues to not be okay with this, and power will shift in such a way where that accountability can come sooner rather than later. Because if all of this happens in the darkness as they'd prefer that it would, it's much more difficult to make the case of what this looks like in reality, what it looks like when a dad is pulled out of his car in front of his kids, what it looks like when a man who's just doing his job gets tackled and beat with unnecessary force. Those are the sort of things that make regular everyday people stop for a second and say, wait a second, I thought you were going after criminals. Wait a second, I thought you were following the law yourselves. And so I just I want to make sure that we don't get discouraged from building a case for over the long term to, one, change the way that things are happening, and two, hold folks accountable for the abuses that are occurring and have occurred.
I'll add an extra layer to that is we have been recommending people to, I know it's kind of a long shot sometimes because things happen very fast, but we have been encouraging our people to call the police if they can identify who's being, who are the people arresting folks. And so bringing the police out could also help us in just getting accurate information, identifying the officers, and making sure they're actually federal agents that are performing those acts.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Ortiz. So I want to cap it off with Councilmember Hilo Rivera for a closing statement. And I just want to say, first and foremost, thank you to everyone that has been in this forum. We try to condense it to an hour and a half just because we want to be mindful of folks' time, but also making sure that we can provide the most robust and most accurate information to you all. So we will be sending out a follow-up email. The state senator's office will, with recapping everything that we've talked about. We will also be having transcripts in various languages, as mentioned, Dari, Farsi, Arabic, Vietnamese, and other languages as well. So those will be in the near future be available to everyone that was not able to be here tonight. So I'll leave it with Councilmember Hilo Rivera for a closing statement.
Oh, thank you, Roberto. I just want to say thank you again to everyone. Obviously, all the folks who've joined us here tonight and have tuned in, but especially our community partners, the Department of Justice, the Mexican Consulate, Alliance San Diego, ACLU, San Diego and Imperial Counties. Councilmember Ortiz, thank you for your participation and the comments you've made. Supervisor Cardenas Singh, very much appreciate you being here. And certainly Senator Padilla's office. I really appreciate Senator Padilla wanting to pull this together. I'm super grateful that we're able to do this. And we think about the geographic area that we're covering today. I think it's kind of inspiring to see that, from the South Bay of San Diego up to the area that I represent, which is kind of the mid-city area of San Diego, all the way out into Imperial County. We've got representation on here. And so thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for being a part of this. And if this was useful to you all, let us know so that we can figure out additional ways to support everyone. We'll get through this. It's not going to be easy, but we are going to get through this.
Thank you so much and have a good night to everyone. We appreciate it.
Thank you.